Welcome back to the Ascended Workplace. I'm Adam.
And I'm Rebecca, and we're the co-founders of Ascended Consulting, where we transform generational challenges into leadership wins by creating systems of accountability. And this week, our episode is high expectations plus high support equals high performance. What we need you to know is that you don't need to lower the bar for Gen Z. You just have to raise the support around them. So we're going to begin by talking about a myth that currently exists, and that is that Gen Z can't handle pressure. The fact is, we've heard it over and over that people are saying they're soft, they can't take feedback, and that they don't want to work. But let's be clear, that really is a myth, because Gen Z can handle the pressure, but only if we give them the tools to succeed under it. And that means giving them clarity, structure, and consistent feedback. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like in practice. So the first one is to make expectations visible and repeatable. Whatever your expectations are, first off, let me take a step back. We said clarity first. The expectations need to be clear and visible, right? Because if we just say, hey, you need to take initiative, a lot of Gen Z doesn't know what that means. So be clear in the expectation and then make it visible and repeatable. So it should be, go ahead.
Sorry, we come back to, we talked about it previously, but what does that look like and what does that sound like? And that's how you make sure it's clear.
Yeah, perfect. I love that. So you should have them written down. You should have them posted in shared spaces. You should refer to them in every meeting, and they should absolutely be the center of feedback, both pre-meeting, during the meeting, post-meeting. The expectation should be central to all of it when you're dealing with feedback sessions. Another practical application is to build a rhythm of feedback, which we talk about consistently in different episodes, but especially last week when we talked about how to create a system of accountability. So you have to build a rhythm of feedback by making sessions consistent, whether it's bi-weekly 15-minute check-ins or a digital check-in that only takes 3 to 5 minutes. Whatever that form looks like, it needs to be consistent and it needs to be frequent. And you give them the opportunity to provide answers to a couple questions. So I talked about last week what those questions could look like, but it can be phrased in different ways. So this week I'm going to give you a different way to phrase the same 2 questions. And one is to say, what's one thing I'm proud of this week? And another one is, where do I feel unsure or stuck? And when you use these prompts, what you're doing is you're ensuring that the team member is already thinking about their own performance and where they anticipate needing coaching. So normalizing the idea that you're going to need coaching, but also normalizing the idea that when you do particularly well, there's an opportunity to be celebrated as well. So this week, this takes some of the guesswork out of the manager's role. The manager has a lot more clarity going into those feedback sessions as well, and it helps the manager to know where they need coaching and to be able to provide that. So it shows that the organization cares about support, not just finding out when you need it, but then actually following through providing that support. So it's not about coddling Gen Z, it's about providing clarity. And support gives them the confidence to rise to the challenge.
Yeah, it's all about the intentional structure, and that's going to start with how you communicate. You know, say the standard, show the standard, return to the standard, and always we're going to coach towards that standard. We're not lowering it for any reason, right? So you're going to start every feedback session by restating that standard, which means you're going to come into it and say, in this role, you could say timely communication is a non-negotiable towards the clients. That's something that this is a part of the role. And then transfer into the performance discussion. So you've already set the standard of what we're going to be talking about. Everyone knows the standard in the session, whether it's you, a manager, or the employee, whoever. And now you're talking about the performance. So you've already set the standard before you begin the conversation, right? So you can always come back to that. It's going to keep everyone on the same page, and it's going to make feedback as non-personal as possible. It's going to keep it to just the organization's standard.
Absolutely.
Another practical application of this is to use a coaching model, which is the I do, we do, and you do strategy. In order to do this, you're going to demonstrate the skill first, then you're going to do it together, and then you're gonna pull the reins back a little bit and allow them to try it on their own, still with support. You're not just releasing them, but it's a gradual release of responsibility towards the standard. So what that looks like, if your employee is struggling to send a professional email, right? You can first invite the employee to sit next with you, and you can write it together. And what you're gonna do in that is you're gonna walk through your thinking process. So you're gonna say, I need to come up with a friendly greeting here, so I'm gonna say happy Monday, and then I'm gonna jump into a summary of what the email is gonna be about, and I wanna make sure I have a lot of white space so it doesn't just come off as a block of text. And they're hearing that while I'm doing it at the same time. Then they get a reply for one of their clients or someone that they're working with. You're gonna sit with them and do it together. So you can pull back a little bit on your thinking out loud. You want them to do some of the thinking. It's more together.
It's more of leading them with questions.
Leading them with questions instead of just you showing them what you're doing, right? And then finally, again, you're not just gonna fully pull back and say, okay, go for it, but you're gonna say, all right, now you're gonna try it, and I'm gonna look at it before you send it and give any maybe final tweaks that might still be necessary. But what this is gonna do though, is it's gonna build trust from the employee to the manager, and it's going to continue to build psychological safety, which we talked about in previous episodes. A benefit of accountability is creating psychological safety, right? That's going to allow room for growth, and it's going to create that safety that allows the growth to come up, building trust and risk taking. So with that, right, so as we're thinking about risk taking now and building trust, another practical application as a leader, you can start your meetings with a lessons learned moment where you talk about your own growth and the mistakes that you've made and how you've learned from them. This is going to normalize failure as a part of your organization in a positive way. Not failure necessarily, but the growth that comes from it. It's not a bad word to say you failed sometimes, as long as you're learning and you're making progress and you're asking questions when you need to. And if the leader's modeling that, oh my gosh, everyone's gonna feel like they can do it. Everyone's gonna understand that it's okay if we make a mistake. We know how to grow, right? So the leader models it. And then in addition to that, you can even set up, I just hit the table. Additionally, you can set up growth spotlights where employees share how they've developed a skill. So it's not just coming from the leaders, it can come from peers that they're working with. They share the missteps, they share how they were coached, they share what they did to reach out or didn't do to reach out, whatever it is, and how they grew as a result. I'm really passionate about this.
And the benefit there isn't just that it's changing the culture around, seeing mistakes as like the worst possible thing and creating this idea where people shouldn't try and grow and extend themselves, but it also provides opportunity for people to learn from other people's mistakes, not just from the process of making a mistake and then moving forward, but when they're hearing, oh, I made this mistake and here's how I fixed it, they're not only is that helping with the culture, but it is also doing the teaching of, here are some pitfalls that you can avoid. So it's like a double win.
Yeah. It also addresses probably common issues that are going on, because if one person's struggling with it, chances are someone in the same position or a similar position might be struggling in the same kind of way. They hear it from a peer instead of from a leader. It feels less combative. It's so much more just growth together, which is awesome.
It's great. I love it. And then also I kind of was thinking while you were talking about the I do, we do, you do model, how there might be some people who are going to be like, that's so much time and energy. Oh. And that's a pretty common complaint when you talk about the investment of coaching. But I'm using the term investment on purpose because investments pay off in dividends if you invest well, right?
Over time.
So what you're really looking at here is you're investing up front to save in the end and to see exponential growth in these team members because you're building a really strong foundation in them, and then you can launch them, and then when they've experienced it themselves, they know now how to do it with others as well. So it's worth that time and that energy. Instead of always being reactive and frustrated, you're being proactive and guiding and leading in the direction that you want your team members to go and grow. So I liked that, the I do, we do, you do.
The classic.
The classic. It's a classic. So additionally, now I want to talk about this idea of, we've talked about these ideas of helping them to be coached. And sometimes there is, especially lining up right along with that time investment of not really wanting to invest that time to provide the support that they need. Sometimes people are like, oh, it's so much easier to just lower my expectations, do it myself, or give the task to somebody else. But there's a real danger in lowering the expectations for your team members instead of raising the support for them. So the trap is thinking that you're helping when you lower the bar, but you are really not helping, because low expectations are going to kill the morale of your team, especially for your high performers. Because what they're going to see is they're going to see that they're working harder and they're providing more quality and more value to the company, but they're not getting the same, they're not getting rewarded and recognized for it. They're seeing someone next to them who's getting they're at the same staff level,
right?
And that person has less work given to them because the bar is lowered for them, whereas they're still being asked to meet the high expectations because they have met them.
Right.
But then they start to feel like they're not valued, and for the other team member, they start to hear a message of, we don't think you can do more. So you have one person who is really excelling, but they're not getting any kind of credit for it, so they're going to develop resentment,
and they're getting more work as a result.
Yeah, they're definitely going to feel resentment about the fact that this other person is at the same level as them but has less to do or less is expected from them. So that it creates resentment in one person. The other person's going to create disengagement. Both of them are a recipe for people leaving.
Yep.
And so it really can harm your company. So that's why we really emphasize the need to keep your high expectations, but to also offer that high support, because when you lower the expectations, it really damages both the team member and the people around them, the team members around them. And so what can you do, right? So you can ask yourself, to recognize, you need to audit your team standards and ask, have we stopped pushing certain team members because it's just easier to just stop pushing them, to not do the work that it takes to help to bring them up? And if so, then you need to reset the bar and explain why.
We always come back to that why.
We always come back to the why. And I think it's important to kind of address why.
Yeah.
Right? Why the why? And so when we think about Gen Z, they were raised with this idea that they collaborate with the adult figures when they were not adults.
Right.
So parents, teachers, and mentors often treated Gen Z more like peers than subordinates. And they're used to being included in decisions, not just being told what to do. So when authority figures don't explain the reasoning, it feels like a violation of that norm. And you can agree or disagree with the norm, because personally, I actually take I don't think it's the best thing to treat children like adults.
So allow the child in the adult conversation. It was their
experience. It is what took place in their worlds, and that is how they understand and view the world. So although we say it shouldn't have been that way, some of us, that doesn't change the fact that it is what it was, and now we need to operate within that. And it's a really easy thing to just be able to explain to people why you're doing something. Well, it creates a lot of buy-in.
Yeah. Well, we have a personal example that you feel pretty passionate about. I don't know if you wanted to tell them.
I can.
We were talking about it earlier, I know.
Yeah. So, it's happened many times, but it just happened a couple months ago. We went to some professional development, and at it, they brought in students to tell the leadership teams, not just regular
not just staff,
teachers,
no, it's full leadership
teams, how to teach children, telling professionals who have years and years of experience, this is how you should teach. And in fact, the student even said something that goes completely against all instruction on how to be a high quality teacher and how to provide equity. And so it was just one of those moments where I immediately under my breath said, why are we asking children to be the ones to teach the professionals?
Right, but it is the standard. It's what they, it's not the standard, but it's what they've grown up with. It's what they expect. And it's seen throughout, not just education,
constantly.
But
Yes, and so because that is what they were raised with, this collaborative idea that they're on the same playing field as the adults, when they're just told, here's the expectation and you need to meet it, that doesn't it doesn't compute for them. So they have to have a why behind it. And it's really easy to give them the why.
Right.
It's a very simple thing to explain the why behind everything you're doing, because you know why you're doing it. Just tell them, just clue them in. Also, because of the way that they were raised, to them it might feel like withholding if you don't just explain the why. Even though you just feel like you don't need to them they're like, what are they hiding? And it kind of erodes trust for them. So it's really important to include the why as you raise that expectation level for them.
And then you also, we were talking before this, but you also were talking about a way to quickly give the why that addresses almost, it's pretty universal.
Oh yeah, it's like a blanket why.
Yeah, a blanket why, which is that I believe you can do more. I'm putting my trust in you that you can rise to this level. I believe I don't need to lower these like those kinds of things, which is again building trust.
Yeah.
Raising people up instead of tearing them down, still coaching. I mean, that is just the easiest win, but in such a small sentence and little phrase, but
it works for all instances.
Yeah, but without it though, it crumbles without that why, which is why we always come back to it. So we talk about Gen Z growing up in a system that never held them accountable. We've talked about grade inflations, no deadlines, and credit for doing nothing. Students aren't used to being asked to step up, so many interpret accountability as punishment rather than coaching. Traditional management style might feel that supporting them is a crutch and a waste of time. But it's really not a crutch. It's the only way to build sustainable accountability that leads to the growth that you're looking for.
Yeah. So organizations really need both high expectations and high support for their team members, not just to survive, but to thrive, especially when we're talking about Gen Z. These I'm saying students, but these young adults really need that. So at Ascended, we help companies to build the systems that make this possible. We work with leadership teams to implement real accountability by design and not by default. So if you're seeing turnover, inconsistent performance, or leadership burnout, chances are your support systems aren't scaling with your expectations. So the big question that we're looking at are your expectations matched with the right level of support? And if not, let's change that. So reach out to us at ascendedconsulting.com to talk about how we can help you build a workplace where high expectations and high growth go hand in hand.
So make sure you follow us on social media and leave a rating of this podcast if you got some value out of today's episode. Remember, never lower the bar, just raise the support. Thank you for listening.